Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And with this one, I wanted to bring you some of my favorite Resto Druid tips and tricks. These are things that I'm trying to do in every game and I'm trying to work on and improve throughout that will no doubtably increase my rating and likely yours if you also choose to focus and work on them as well. So in this particular video, I will be playing with a Shadow Priest and an Arms Warrior. I'll be facing an Arms Warrior and an Enhancement Shaman. So my main goal is to protect the Shadow Priest against the Arms Warrior and the Enhancement Shaman. And we're going to do this using the Mass Entanglement talent, Cyclone, Thorns, and Iron Bark. And you're going to want to cycle through all of these to deny the incoming threats from your opponents. And I'm going to be highlighting what those are as we go throughout this game. The number one thing at the start of a fight like this, where there's two melee DPS and you're playing with a ranged DPS, this could be a Shadow Priest, this could be a Warlock. No one's playing with warlocks. You're going to want to use your mass entanglement basically from your mount. You're going to be running in and you're going to be using mass entanglement and you're going to be using Ursul's Vortex. And the main purpose of this is to give your Shadow Priest space so they don't need to deal with the amount of interrupts that's immediately available and ready for them almost at all times from two melee DPS. And ranged DPS will love you for this. This will probably get you more teammates than anything else, is your ability to alleviate the amount of interrupts that are just being pushed into them and soak some for yourself, or just make it impossible for those interrupts to connect onto your Shadow Priest instead. So definitely focus on this. Using crowd control is going to be very important. I like running the new Honor talent High Winds. This reduces healing and damage by the target by 30% when they come out of a cyclone. So even going for cyclones that are on diminishing return are still going to hold some value. So again, at the start of the fight, you get hots up on your Shadow Priest and you get ready for Mass Entanglement. You want to make sure that the Warrior and Shaman don't get to your Shadow Priest immediately. Then you use Ursul's Vortex to pin them away from their mobility. And this gives your Shadow Priest enough time to get damage over time effects onto the whole team and start ramping up for their go. Now, in this position, you're crowd controlled and an intimidating shout. However, your Shadow Priest has a Fleshcraft fully channeled from the start of the game, so you should not trinket this. The absorb will be more than enough. Here I see Colossus Smash. We can see it right here on my Warrior. That's a scary cooldown. So I'm going to use Cenarian Ward, Innervate, and Overgrowth on that target. That means that target is not going to die. I don't need to focus on my Warrior anymore. Start hotting up my Shadow Priest as I'm expecting a swap. Save Thorns for the swap. So Cenarian Ward on one target, Thorns on the other target. This way, they're not really attacking into a favorable situation. And when we've utilized crowd control on the Paladin so they can't heal, it's then scaring their team. We can see them all down at half health. I try and Cyclone out of the chain, and I'm relying on Nature's Swiftness here as a failsafe if my Shadow Priest takes too much damage. So I'm just staring at my Shadow Priest frame. I'm getting prepared to do Swift Mend, Nature Swiftness, Regrowth, and that's going to be your big heal if you absolutely need it. So I'm just sitting crowd control, and that's going to be my emergency fallback. My Shadow Priest is avoiding damage by kiting. I'm monitoring the situation if it's necessary. In this position, I deemed my trinket more valuable than the Dispersion, so I tell my Shadow Priest use Dispersion, and then I set up for a big heal. But they're still taking a lot of damage, so Swift Mend, Nature Swiftness, Regrowth, immediately going to allow that target to recover. Now I've got Cenarian Ward again, and I've got Adaptive Swarm, and I've got Iron Bark. So I've got a buffet of defensive cooldowns that I'm going to need to figure out where I want to put. Remember the Colossus Smash, this Warbreaker debuff that we saw earlier on this part of the frame. I'm always looking at this part of the frame as well as this health bar, of course. So I'm going to use Iron Bark on my Priest, and this is going to reduce damage on the Priest. But I also split my Cenarian Ward onto my Warrior. This way they don't have a good target, because my Warrior and my Shadow Priest are right next to each other. If I put all of my big bank, invest everything into my Shadow Priest account, and then they switch to my Warrior account, I am going to be tanking. Okay, it's going to be a Warrior crash, Warrior market crash. So you want to be spreading those effective resources onto two targets. After we've recovered through their burst, time to start cycloning the healer, get control of them, and also reduce their healing through the High Winds talent. So when this Paladin comes out of the clone, they're going to go for a heal, but they have a debuff on them along with the mortal wounds from their Warrior. And that Divine Favor didn't even top the Enhancement Shaman from quite a high margin of health. So then I go for another Cyclone onto the Paladin to hold them in place. But here's Doom Winds. This is a very scary cooldown from the Enhancement Shaman. So I use Ursul's Vortex to pin the Shaman and Warrior away from my Shadow Priest, and use Cenarian Ward on my Warrior, because the Shaman here can't really hit anything else if we're watching where he is. So once you've peeled the targets away from the Shadow Priest, you can almost always expect them to immediately immediately hit the next target beside them. So I've been using Cenarian Ward pretty much on my warrior the entire game, and this is also because the warrior can intervene the Shadow Priest and redirect damage to themselves, so then he'll see that redirected damage very easily. And then I'm choosing to use Iron Bark and Thorns on my Shadow Priest, so that's the way I've got my resources allocated here. Cycloning the target at low health on a defensive cooldown. The Paladin bubbled crowd control, used Sacrifice on the Shaman to stop them from taking damage. Well, I'm going to stop them from taking healing and cyclone them at low health and try to chain this into multiple cyclones until the crowd control immunity is over, and then switch the cyclone to the healer. And now both these targets are going to be in quite a bit of trouble. This is where you could get aggressive. You could put up Sunfire, Moonfire, a couple of dots for your teammates, but you also want to be focusing on controlling the Paladin here. I should have honestly started casting the Cyclone a little bit sooner to not allow them to get any extra global cooldowns onto their partners to save them. And then out of the Cyclone, I can also incapacitate. And as a result of this crowd control for myself and the Paladin, both these guys aren't having a good time in the game, and they're both going to ultimately get crunched down with a double kill. So by using my defensive cooldowns in 2 locations, it allows my warrior to stay on the target without having to run away and without just absolutely getting blown up if they got swapped to, which was a really big deal. So I used Cenarian Ward on my warrior pretty much the entire game. I used Iron Bark on my Shadow Priest pretty much the entire game. Then I had Nature's Swiftness as my failsafe. That's the ability that I'm thinking like, oh, you're at 10%, you're gonna die, Swiftman Nature's Swiftness. And I do that on any target that is critically low, around 30% or lower against comps like this, because you can just completely get erased at times. When I see offensive cooldowns, I'm either using Iron Bark or Thorns. Try not to use both of them at the same time on the same target, because then they're going to switch targets, so they're going to stop attacking and you're not going to get too much value. Whereas if you split them up and they decide, I'm going to just stop attacking entirely, both of your friends are going to go back to full health, or they're going to have to attack into Thorns or attack into Iron Bark and get minimal value. So when you're fighting these melee cleaves, you really want to be thinking about that, especially when you're playing with a warrior, is splitting up your resources into 2 places so that they can't just immediately switch to a different target and start crunching them down, and then just always rely on the Nature's Swiftness. And honestly, start going for more Cyclones. I kind of fall into the trap a bit recently of not going for enough Cyclones, where I'm just constantly sitting in the back and just healing the entire fight. But in reality, with the high winds, you reduce a ton of value from the healer, not just by cycloning them anymore, but when they come out. And most healers try to time their biggest heal right when they come out of crowd control. So if you can reduce the effectiveness with a high winds talent by 30%, that talent may then no longer top the target, and your team can ride the momentum and execute for a kill. But I've been really enjoying my time on Druid at the moment. If you'd like to watch me play live, you can watch me on twitch.tv/Supatease. I'm currently gearing up a warrior as well, so if you're interested in following along with that journey of the potato warrior to pro warrior, then definitely stick along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like this type of guidance and content, as I do my best to keep you guys up to date with all of the news with World of Warcraft, any changes to the game, my thoughts, as well as help you out with a couple of guides and tips and tricks videos. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.